Hi everybody, I'm Rachel, and I'm going to continue with our series on weight to volume that has been in, I think, a couple parts already. And in the first two videos on weight to volume tincture making, we started with an herb called Poria Fu Ling, which is a Chinese herb that mainly dries damp and tonifies digestion, helps people digest. And what we ended up with here was a tincture, which is macerating in a liquid. And this is the Poria, and it's been sitting around here for quite a while, and it's really ready to be strained. So the final step in this weight to volume is after it macerates and sits for a few weeks, then we have to press it. We have to press out the dry material from the liquid. And what we have left is the liquid tincture that is the actual medicine. So the way we did this, this is a weight to volume. The proportions are a 1 to 5, 50% weight to volume tincture is the way it's stated. And the proportion 1 to 5 when you're using dried herbs, which is what Poria is, it's a dried fungus. 1 refers to the amount or the weight of the herb, and 5, the 5 parts, refers to the amount of liquid that you put in the tincture. So that's what makes this particular weight to volume one a 1 to 5. It's not the only one in town. There's lots of weight to volume proportions that are appropriate, and it really depends on the chemical constituents, which I talk a lot about in my book, but not for today. Just know that today we're doing a 1 to 5, 50% tincture, and 50% in the case of dried herbs means that 50% of the menstruum or liquid is water and 50% is alcohol. We're using the 95 to 100% pure medicinal strength grain alcohol, ethyl alcohol. So that's what we used, and I started with 8 ounces of this. You can see here the calculations are on here, and we started with, let's see, it's a 1 to 5, 50%. You on it? And I started with 8 ounces of herb, and 8 ounces is equal to about 240 grams, 30 grams to an ounce. So 30 times 30, what is it? So 240, it's a 5-time solution. So 240 grams, you multiply it by 5, and you get 1,200. 1,200 milliliters is the total amount of menstruum. And out of that 1,200, half is alcohol and half is water. So half of 1,200 is 600. So you have 600 of water and 600 of alcohol that we put in here. And here's the alcohol and water. You can see it's at the top. The tincture has changed in color. It was pretty clear when we started, and now it's definitely ready to go. And I put this up actually on May 5th. And it's July something right now, so it's more than ready. There's nothing wrong with keeping it too long, but you just want to make sure that it's a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks while it's macerating. So we're going to press this. So here we go. So I'll show you what we have. I'm going to put on some gloves first. Now this one probably won't stain my hands, but a lot of times the tinctures are very staining, especially if they have a lot of chlorophyll in them. They can turn your hands green, and I'd rather not have that happen. These are vinyl gloves, that I bought in a drugstore. They're medical exam gloves, and it's more economical to buy them in large boxes. So here's my gloves, and here's my herb press. So first off, I've shown you my herb press before, and I have to use a straining cloth. Now here's one I'm going to show you. This is a 100% cotton Muslim cloth. It's really a dish rag, and I bought a bunch of these actually in the dollar store, and they work great. You want them somewhat porous, so that they have little holes in them, but you don't want something with too many holes, or you'll get the plant material going through. And some of the older books tell you to use cheesecloth, but that doesn't work. So I can kind of see you through it a little bit. So it's not a real tight weave, but it's about right. And this is stained. This is clean, but it's stained because the herbs stain it. So this has been stained kind of a brownish color because of all the herbs I've used in the past. So I use this once and then I'll wash it. And what I've done here is I wet it. I took it under the sink and wet it and then wrung it out, because you want to start with a damp cloth. So here's my herb press. This is going to be the collecting jar. And first I have to take out the tray of this, and it's fairly heavy. And inside the tray is a metal strainer that's raised. It's raised a little bit. And then on the bottom of this is a tube, and that's where the menstruum's going to go. So I'm going to lay it here on the table, and I drop the cork. So I have a rubber cork, and I put it in the bottom of the tube just to be safe that nothing leaks out before I want it to. And I take my wet cloth, and I'm going to lay it over and make a little basket. What's going to happen is the menstruum's going to go into below the little strainer, and the herb material is going to stay on the top. So this is nice and tight down here, so nothing's going to leak. And I'm going to take my poria, and I'm going to pour it in here carefully. Get all the herb out of the jar. Really smells strong of alcohol. Sometimes it doesn't come out as easily as this one did. And what I do is, in that case, is I'll use a chopstick to try to break it up and get it to come out. But that's pretty good. Nothing's leaking. Some of the menstruum has come down into the tube down here. And now I'm going to fold it up so that all the herb material is within the cloth. So we don't want to get it mixed up with the menstruum. So I'm like making a little basket here. And holding up, giving it a little squeeze. So I put this cloth, if you can see that, in the middle of the basket. So now I'm going to slide it in to my press. And my clean collecting jar is going to go under the tube, the collecting tube. And now I have to take out the cork, and you'll see a lot of the menstruum will be coming into the jar, like so. This was just the extra that was on the top. And now I'm going to tighten my herb press. And what this is really a hydraulic jack for a car tire, to jack up a tire. And I'm going to start, some of these have hydraulic lifts on them, but mine is a hand press, herb press. And you see it's gradually coming up. And what we want is the bottom of my herb to press against the top of this tray here. Here it comes. It's starting to squeeze together. This is getting closer. And here we go. It's starting to squeeze. And you can do this by hand. The problem with doing it by hand is you never get all your menstruum out. And it takes a lot of work. Like wringing out a towel. Here comes my clear menstruum from the Poria. This is going to be a lovely tincture. One that I use a lot of. And as more liquid drains out into the collecting jar, you can jack this up a little tighter. So that you get every precious drop out of your mark, which is the herb. It's about as tight as it's going to go. And I'm going to let that drain for a minute. And I just wanted to say a little bit about menstruums while we're talking about it, while we're letting this press out. Menstruums can be more than alcohol and water. In this case, we've used alcohol and water. And that weight to volume is based on the fact that 1 cubic centimeter or 1 milliliter of water weighs 1 gram. That's what weight to volume means. It means it weighs 1 gram, and it's an equivalent. But that's true because of the specific gravity of water, and specific gravity of water is 0. So other menstruums have different densities, and alcohol really, well, half of this is water and half is alcohol. Alcohol actually is a little less dense than water. But if I were to use other things in the menstruum, such as glycerin, vegetable glycerin, that's another possibility, that's a little heavier than water. And then you can use vinegar as a menstruum as well. And they all have different specific gravities. And so do the herbs that are being pressed out. Some of the plant material is going into the water and the alcohol, and that's going to change the density of the finished product. So in this kind of proportion, you're never going to have it exact because you're not just using plain water. But it's good enough for general herbal use, and it's been a convention that's been used for hundreds of years, particularly with the eclectics in herbal medicine. So this is weight to volume is what we're talking about here. Just to try to be more clear, I did do a a fresh tincture with you with Bacopa, and in that situation, it wasn't this kind of, it was a 1-to-2 proportion, but that proportion was had a different meaning to it. It just meant that one part of herb was made with 2 parts of pure alcohol, like a 1/2 proportion, which means 50% if you calculated it out. And so that would be a 50% weight to volume tincture. But this one is different. This refers to the percentage of alcohol, so it's a little different. Just to clarify, and it can be confusing, and I'm going to post it on my blog and make it a little simpler for those of you who really want to understand this. So here we go. I think I've got just about all the menstruum that we're possibly going to get out of here. So now I'm going to loosen the press. And here it comes down. So now what I'm going to do is slip this out and plug it up with my cork. Oops. Take this out again. And I want to show you, there's going to be some more menstruum in the bottom, which we're going to have to get out. But I want to show you what the mark looks like after it's been pressed. You can pan in here, and look what I have. I have this poria that almost looks like it did when it was dried. Look how dry and crumbly that is. That's showing you that I have every good to the last drop menstruum out of this dried poria that's now been pressed. And so what I'm going to do with this is just put it in my compost bin, because it'll help with the plants that I'm growing. So this is the dried. It goes in the bin. We're done with this now. Just going to put it over here. Get it out of the way. And then I'm going to lift up a tray. Okay. Let's see what I have left in here. Very little. But I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to put it in here with my poria. Okay. So this is the finished product, and it looks pretty good. There's no plant matter in there, or very little, and sometimes there's a little left over, which would be a sediment that would fall to the bottom, but that doesn't hurt anything. You can just allow your sediment to be there. And now, just for fun, I'm going to measure it out. If you remember, what I started with was 1,200 milliliters of liquid. Now, theoretically, I would end up with 1,200 milliliters of liquid, but that never happens. You always lose some. There's always going to be some loss. So whatever I end up with is going to be considered the yield. However, I just have to admit that I did one little thing here. I was running out of poria before I got around to straining this. So what I've been doing is cheating and siphoning off a little bit at the top when I needed it in tincture. So I've also used a little that way too. So let's just measure it. And this graduated cylinder only holds 500 mils, and theoretically I should have 1,200. So that's going to be too small. So I've chosen to measure it out in a 4-cup, or 4 cups is a quart measuring cup, or 1 liter. It's approximately a liter. 500 milliliters is close to a liter, is a liter. So we're going to fill it up. These Pyrex measuring cups are really good for herbal use because you have it in ounces and you have it in milliliters. So you have a little conversion right there in the measuring tool. So let's just see what I got. And again, I'm going to use a funnel just to, I don't want to spill any. And let's see what we have here. Okay, this is the quart. This is the English side. Here's my metric. Here is 700. It looks like I have 750 mils is what I got out of this. 750 milliliters of Poria. So, you see that? It's approximate. So, I don't know how much I've used in my tincture already, but we had started with up to the top. 1 liter is 1,000, and we had 1,200. So, 850, 950, 1050, 11. So, 450 milliliters loss in this, minus maybe 50. Maybe we lost 400 after all said and done, and we subtracted what I used, what I took off before the fact. So that's what I've got. And then what I'll do eventually, here's another Boston Round. I'll put it in my Boston Round containers. I have a larger one. This one is going to be too small for this. I'm going to need more than one of these. But that's what you do. And then of course you want to label these and be very careful and say what it was, and down here at the bottom I have my proportions. This one was bilberry fruit. This one was a 1 to 3, 60% on this particular one here. So it was 1 to 3, whereas this one we just did was 1 to 5. And the percentages were different, but they're still weight to volume. So, and I also have a lot number. I keep track of lot numbers so that I know what batch of herbs I'm using in case something is bad. It doesn't happen often, but once in a while you could get a contaminated batch of herbs. So this is my finished tincture. It smells a little earthy. And I do have other tinctures that we haven't done. I just wanted to show you, a little while ago we did a video on Bacopa, fresh Bacopa, and I haven't strained it yet. But look what color it's turned already. It's turned a kind of dark color. So this has been sitting there since June 30th. Here's another one that I did with you guys. We did fresh valerian root, and I haven't strained that, and I really need some more, but look how that's turned nice and brown. So you can see they change color as they sit and macerate. So that was the last session of our first weight to volume presentation, and I hope you got the gist of what this is. And don't forget to check out my blog where I'll be explaining these things in greater detail. Thank you.